Hello everyone. I wanted to check in and do a review of some brush pens that Arteza sent to me. So Arteza is an American company based in Delaware, and they make really affordable, pretty decent quality materials for artists of all kinds. Many different kinds of materials. I was contacted by them, I don't know, a couple months ago to see if I would like to collaborate in some way. In other words, they would send me some of their products that I was interested in, and then I would do reviews of them, and honest reviews, they said. So I thought that was really great. They also offered an affiliate program, which I declined. If I'm going to review something, I have a really hard time getting paid for that. You know what I mean? I just think it's better if that doesn't happen. So I'm not an affiliate. I will share some links below in the description box that they sent me. One is a coupon that you can use, and then one is how to buy these products on their website. And I don't receive any compensation for that, but it's just for you. It's a discount that they offer. So you'll find those in the description box. But I've already reviewed many of their products, and overall, I've just been really happy. The only product that I wasn't as crazy about were the watercolor pencils, but I'm not that experienced with them. So, but I was comparing them to my artist grade pencils that I use now and then, and there was a big difference between the two. I think they'd be fine for certain applications. They didn't really meet my needs for a watercolor pencil. But this week, I'm going to look at their water brush pens, or they're called Real Brush Pens. Unique colors, blendable, water-based ink. And this is the 48 color set, okay? And it comes in this sort of clear plastic box, which I don't think I would use to keep them in. I would probably put them in some jars so they're easier to use. Excuse me. On the back of the box, they talk about the colors and color numbers, but that's really all there is, just a color number and the name of the color. And there's also a 20% off coupon and a helpful tips website that you can visit. Now, with a lot of their products on the back, especially their watercolors and gouache, they not only give the color number and name, but they give the pigment information, light fast rating, and whether it's transparent or opaque. But I'm assuming, because these are dye-based markers, that they're not going to give that information, because they probably are not light fast and there's no pigments used, right? So it comes with 48 colors, and they're in these plastic trays. And I would find this annoying personally. Some people might be more organized than I am and find this fine. I would probably group them by, yellow, orange, red, green, blue, and just put them in a upright container in that way. So I'm not going to go through every one of the colors, all right, but I am going to take a sample of them. And like a warm and a cool gray. In the lighter shades, I'll take a darker one. I'm mostly interested in the more natural colors anyways. So I'm just going to sort of take a sampling of colors that I would tend to use. And test them out for you. So there's some grays and browns, some natural tones. I'll take some blues and a violet and a pink, just so I get a wide variety. There's a lot of pretty colors in here. Let's see, a nice warm yellow and a cool yellow, a nice red, burgundy. We're just gonna randomly sort of do some of these. A really light blue, a good selection of greens, and maybe like a teal, okay? So I've got these, and I believe the packaging, as always, is really nice. The presentation is really nice. All of Arteza's products are very well presented, and the quality of the actual tools are really nice. So this one, it says Arteza Real Brush Pens, and then it has the color name and number. And then the bottom of it has a color-coded cap, so you kind of have an idea. So quite frankly, I'm not sure about storing them this way, but it might be a great way to store them. So if you put them upside down in a glass, the ink would always be flowing to the tip, because sometimes if we store things like this, the ink flows down and the tips get dry. So you could store them like this and see the colors right away when you're picking them, and we'll see how close they match. So I'm also going to show you this sketchbook. And this is one of their premium watercolor sketchbooks. It is super nice. Hardcover with a cloth fabric on it, a nice elastic band to keep it shut. These sketchbooks are fairly nice. They the paper is decent. Okay, they do lay flat, all the way flat. It is, I wouldn't call it artist grade paper, but for a sketchbook, it's super nice. Okay, and so you can see I've already done color swatches. What's interesting, which is really what I would use this for, like thumbnails and color swatches to do experimenting, right? And what's interesting about these sketchbooks is that they're double-sided paper. So one side is smooth for a hot press, okay? And then the next side is cold press. All right, so you can see how beautifully the color lays on the paper. I don't think it's going to be great for scrubbing techniques or lifting techniques, but this is a wonderful watercolor sketchbook, really affordable price for basic color exploration and color studies, things like that, and for drawing, you know, to figure out compositions. So you can see this is the hot press side, all right, and this is the cold press side. Okay, so and they have a nice ribbon marker. So these are really super. I have been very impressed with this. I'm gonna find one. Let's see, for a while there was a thing where I would have both cold and hot, but we're just gonna have to do one at a time. So let's do the cold press side first, which is going to be with a bit of a texture. It has a nice texture too. And I'm just going to try a few techniques with these markers and see what we think. So this one is called Turtle Green. And what I noticed, I did try one out. Oh, also it comes with a water brush pen, which I didn't, so just like a water brush that you can take with you. I like to use regular brushes, so I just took it out. But it was a nice one. So I noticed right away I can get really, really fine lines. Super, super fine. The brush is fabulous. And I can also go from really fine to fairly thick and then back to really fine again. The brush has a lot of spring in it, okay? And that's really important when you're using a brush pen, because if you're using it to draw, you want to be able to have that range. So in other words, I want to be able to go fine and then go thicker and then go fine. And it does it pretty seamlessly. Okay, so that's great. So that's one thing I noticed. Let's just keep moving on. I'm going to try one of the brushes that they sent me, and this is one of the bigger ones. So they sent me the set of detail brushes, which I talk about in the gouache review video. And this is a size 1 round. It's the largest of the brushes in the detail set. They are quite nice for a very, very affordable price. You get some good, really fine detail brushes. So let's just see what happens if I take a detail brush and just run through this. So it's interesting. Where the water hits it, it's going to pick up some of that color and carry it with it sometimes. All right, not always. Let me grab a tissue. And I'm just showing you techniques that I would use. So if I go over here and I lift it, if I'm using a detail brush to sort of lift color, it's pretty staining, okay, on this cold pressed paper. All right. So sometimes I'll do that. I'll put color down, even with just watercolor, and then I go back to lift a little bit out. And that's a pretty staining color. It's not going back to the white of the paper. So that might be actually a benefit at times. But let's see what happens if I take a lot of water. So I do get some watercolor effect, okay? But what I've noticed with these is that the line remains, okay? So when you make a line, it's gonna pretty much stay put on your paper, and then you can get this light watercolor effect on top. Very pretty. And if I drop water into it, I'll get some nice bloom effects. Works really well that way. Now what happens, another way that I would use these is I would just put water down on my paper, a nice sort of puddle of water, okay? And then let's try another color. This time we're using Night Sky Blue. And what if I just touch the tip of the watercolor brush? How much does it spread? So I'm just touching the tip. It doesn't go very far, right? So I'd have to really sort of move it around to get it to fill this space. Let's go in a little bit of a wetter area down here. That's a little better. So more water, I get a little bit. Do you see that? And you see how the color sort of whooshed? So that's an important, if I wet the water brush, if I wet the brush pen, it sort of dilutes the color. And it doesn't really. Okay, so that's another test that I would do, all right? Now, what happens when it's so wet like this and I just start dropping more water in? So these pens, when you apply them to the paper, really hold their line, okay? No matter how much water you put on it, it's gonna hold the line, at least with these two colors so far. So this one is called Coffee. Let's try this one. Okay, so if we put sort of a more concentrated application and I immediately put water on it, okay, I get a very light brown that lifts up, but those lines that I put down remain on the paper, okay? That was Coffee. This one is called Chamomile. What a nice color. Some of the colors are really beautiful. I'm just making different kind of strokes. So let's say I'm just putting in some sort of random strokes for like a shrub in a landscape or something. And then drop some water into it with a brush. This color is so light that it barely blends. So you really see those strokes, and there's not a lot of color coming off of that. So one thing you should know about these is that the color really hugs the page. Okay, it's not gonna like totally disappear like a watercolor. Now this could make some really cool effects, I think. Let me see, is this the coffee? No, wine red. Let's try this one. This one is called Green Tea. So let's say I am drawing sort of like a shrub. We use sort of Van Gogh-ish marks. So they're going to be best for more graphic applications, more of an illustrative style, right? Not a, so if I use just water, I'm not getting a whole lot of color coming up, right? And that's just immediately putting water on it. I'm barely getting any. See that? But if I take the brush pen and just sort of hold it into the wet area, I'm still not really getting a lot of color. But look, what would happen if we, on top of this, put another color? So let's see. We'll drop some watercolor in. What happens? It's sort of hiding. Sort of hiding those other marks, but they're still there a little bit. So I don't really see the benefit of doing that because you're losing the marks underneath. I was just curious to see what would happen when you combine the two. You certainly could, and there's plenty of room for play here. Let's see if we use them on top. Let's try a darker color. Let's try, this one is called Crocodile Green. Yeah, so it barely, you know, you can barely see it, right? Let's try Crocodile Green on its own. And a fairly dark application of this color, really saturating the page. And then trying to soften that edge. It does not budge. Okay, so remember, this is the Arteza paper. I'm using their paper. Hardly moves at all. It's a beautiful color. I think you could have some fun with it. All right, so I'm going to try another kind of paper to just see what happens. So this is Stonehenge Aqua cold press. And this is the heavier weight Stonehenge Aqua cold press. So let me see what happens on a cotton paper. I'm going to put down some green. And this is that Crocodile Green. It's a really nice green. The colors are, so far the colors are beautiful. And I tend to get a little bit more color up, but not much. Okay, so they're hugging that paper. And then we'll add a little bit of chamomile to the water on the wet side. They don't really rush into the water either. Yeah, it's really giving the same effect. So the paper is probably not going to change, okay, the effects that you get. So just know when you use them, whatever mark you make is going to stay. Let me just show you an example of something else. Like if I had, oh, let's see. These are artist grade watercolor pencils, and I'm just going to grab a color. And if I fill in an area and then maybe just put some lines down, and I put water on it, a lot of the lines will just disappear into the wash. It almost becomes like a watercolor wash. You can see a little bit left over, but it really does disappear. And if I go back over it even, and make it even darker, I can get a pretty strong dilution. Okay, you're still gonna see a little bit, but they sort of dissolve. And especially when you're using these on artist grade paper. If I take a pen, where's my pen? This pen has fountain pen ink in it. And I put a little dot of water on my paper and I put the pen on it. You see how quickly the ink flows into the water? So that is sort of what I would expect from a brush pen, okay? I'm not that familiar with other brands of brush pens. So if I hold a brush pen into the other end, I feel like it should flow a little bit more. The colors are so pretty though. I think you could come up with some great effects with these. All right, this color is called Eggplant Purple. So let's just try this. So here's Eggplant Purple. Put really heavy on the paper. And I feel like it should pick up and fill in the space. I know Arteza has a wonderful ad for these pens. And what they did is they drew flowers. And I'm just gonna sort of draw an expressive loose flower. This is bubblegum pink. Put some red on the outside. This one is called Red. And they have painted them with water. Let's see, I'm just not getting the amount of color that I see on those ads. And then I've seen them take the pen where it's wet and sort of fill in. I'm just not getting the same kind of effects that I would sort of expect. So even if I painted a flower petal, I know with like the Winsor & Newton markers, which I don't have here, I have some at my studio. If I touch the watercolor marker here, it just whooshes and fills in this whole petal. And which is really nice because then I can start with a concentrated color down here, and then it sort of blends up to fill in the rest of it. Let me see what happens if I then take a brush. So that would work. See what I did there? So I started with a concentrated color and then moved it up with my brush. Let's try a little bit of this pink in here, just to give it a little bit. That's kind of fun. And then maybe some of this deeper color right down in here. I have to really work at that. This is called Wine Red. Maybe they just need to get activated a bit. I don't know. I'm just trying to get the color gradation effect that I see on the ads. Let's try some of this one, red. We'll just see what happens if I put a little bit of the red. Yeah, see, I'm not having any luck. I mean, it's coming out. There goes a little bit, but then it just disappears as soon as it gets wet. Right? Let's try, this pretty concentrated color there, and it's hardly picking anything up. See that? Huh. Let's try this. So if I just even painted a circle, and I wanted to make half of my circle yellow. I'm just touching the corner with yellow. So this one seems to work pretty well. So maybe it's just by the color. And then we'll do the other side, night sky blue, which is supposed to be a dark blue. I gotta really work at it. We'll use some of this other yellow to fill it in. And then I wonder if this will make green. No, pretty much. Just very light. And then you could just rinse it in your water. Go back to yellow. So this is how I would use them. I mean, there are people, you know, especially since it's a brush pen, I'm going to be more painterly with it. I'm sure there are people who would use it in a different way. So I'm going to turn the page and I'm just going to show you how it works on hot press paper, which I have a feeling it's going to be even more stubborn. So the first thing I noticed is that if you're not really careful with your lines, you're going to get streaking. Okay, see how I'm seeing the lines. Let's put in some purple, sorry. I'm getting a lot of lines on the hot press paper. I bet it works better on cold press. Yeah, this is going to get really streaky fast. So I would not recommend them on the hot press paper. Okay, so let me just go back to this little pad here. I'm going to try one other thing. Just putting in some water, using my regular ink pen and just touching it. Now the pen's wet. And then I'm going to try this really bright blue. So that's working a little better, huh? Just letting it sort of flow. Okay. And then let's switch to this blue. This one. Just get it flowing a little bit. I don't know, maybe some of these are, there we go. I will say the colors are very beautiful. This one. I'm just seeing if I can get a blending of colors. They do seem to work better on the cotton paper. I like the effects of them better. Let's see if I can lift them and blend them. Much better. See that? So if you are going to do any kind of blending techniques, I would recommend using them on cotton paper because they seem to lift up a little bit better. Let's go back to this one and just see what happens if I try to lift. I'm pretty sure they're going to stain. I'm really scrubbing that. Yeah, these are dye-based. They are going to stain. So once it's down on the paper, it's going to stay on the paper. All right, but I think the effect is a little bit better on the 100% cotton paper than it is on the cellulose paper, which is very nice for watercolor. I just don't think it's the best choice for these pens. I have had this is gouache on this paper, but I've had great luck with watercolor. Sorry, my thing is bouncing all around. I've had great luck with watercolor on this sketchbook. It's very, very nice. The only thing I will say is that you're not going to want to scrub or lift too much because it will sort of distort the paper. And it seems to layer well with about 2 layers. Very nice though. This is the hot press. So even with watercolor, it's beautiful on the hot press and on the cold press. You get great texture and color saturation. But I don't think the brush pens are a good match with it. So I'm not sure. I think these are fun. I think they would be fun to play with and maybe to do like coloring book exercises, things like that. I know a lot of people love those. For a fine art project, they're not really usable anyways because they're not pigments, right? They're simply inks. And so that's fine. They're dye-based inks, I should say. There are some inks that are fine to use in fine art projects. But I think they're just going to be more fun to play with and do coloring in type of exercises. The colors are gorgeous. And I'll keep them on my desk and try them more and more. But they're more for drawing, not really for painting. You're always going to get this, you're always going to have a line that stays. It's pretty tricky to totally blend them out with certain colors. All right, I hope this was helpful. They're really beautiful and fun. I'll definitely play with them some more, but I just kind of wanted to show you how I would use them and how I've used other brush pens to see how they compared. And the other brush pens that I've used are the Faber-Castell and the Winsor Newton. And I have those at my studio. They are pigment-based, and they react totally differently than these. But they're also about $100 more for a set. so that's why. So these are very affordable, really fun to play with. Great for, I would say, craft projects, making greeting cards, doing coloring books, things like that. But I don't think they can be used for true watercolor techniques. All right, everybody. Hope this was helpful, and look in the description box below if this is something that you would want to try. There is a coupon for you. All right, take care. Bye-bye.